Hey Emma,
Yes, Madeline.
what do you call a game that's a side-scrolling, exploration-based adventure where you look for delicious frosted pastries?
I don't know. What do you call it?
A Donutvania! Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I think you can throw anything Vania on the end, and it could be some type of game design. I think that's pretty much the rules that we've established for ourselves in 2019.
A Madelynvania.
A Madelynvania is like you can befriend the characters. It's some kind of strategy-based combat. There are no guns. It's local co-op.
Of course.
But thanks for tuning in, listeners. I'm your Madelynvania host, Madeline.
I'm your Emma host, Emma.
Your Emma-vania host,
No,
Emma.
there's no Vania. It's just Emma host.
And we're here this week to talk about an old and a new game here on this main quest edition. I've never figured out a good, just episode, I guess, is the title.
Yeah.
I've never figured out a good title for our not side quest episodes of Talk This.
They don't need 'em.
This week, if Emma can get any words out through her yawns, we'll be talking about Castlevania and Donut County.
Yeah.
So listeners, get your sweet snacks ready now, because as I researched Donut County, I found myself craving a donut just more and more. It's not even really about that, but just having to see the word donut over and over again was a powerful appetite tool. Did not have a good word for that.
See,
I
I
was
don't
just thinking
spell
about a
donut
donut.
like they spell donut, so it didn't really affect me.
Fair. That's fair. But listeners don't know how I'm spelling it as I say donut over and over and over again. So you can spell it however you like in your mind, but good luck not wanting to eat one by the end of the episode.
Yeah, just pause it right now and go get one. We need a little time to warm up anyway, so...
I might wait until the donut... We're about to have a break. We're talking about castles.
Right.
So unless you have some kind of real attachment to, like, White Castle or something.
Go buy yourself a castle real fast.
Yeah, just real quick. Probably won't take very long. There's a lot of them.
It will add a nice aesthetic to the podcast if you're sitting in your castle surrounded by your Gothic architecture.
We'll wait.
Shouldn't take that long. Okay.
And you're
they're
done.
Back.
Great. Nice. So now that you're sitting in your Gothic architecture castle and you're really feeling that Gothic horror vibe, let's talk about Castlevania.
Let's do it. Tell us about Castlevania.
So Castlevania, the original, is a 1986 game from Konami that was released on the Nintendo Family Computer Disk System, aka the Famicom.
Yep.
And it's a side-scrolling action adventure. I played a little bit of it on like an online platform for it to prep for this.
The original one.
Yeah, the original one.
Cool.
I was gonna play some of Simon's Quest too, but I ran out of time. So in Castlevania, you play as Simon Belmont. How do you think they picked that name? The name Simon.
I don't know. It had to be sort of Europe-y. Simon's kind of Europe-y. I don't know.
I guess it is. I don't know. Simon just doesn't seem like a tough vampire killer name to me.
You know, it's sort of knightly, like Sir Simon, right?
Something about the name Simon isn't tough. Big apologies to anyone named Simon.
Well, no, it's
listening
not
to
like
us.
you wouldn't name your punchy boy Simon, but he's like a guy with like, you know.
He fights with a whip.
Yeah, he's a guy
So in
with a
some
whip.
way, he's a glorified punchy boy. Which is in itself a character trope that everyone refers to as a punchy boy. So, of course, you know what I'm talking about.
I
everybody.
think you can gather what a punchy boy is.
Anyway, you play as Simon Belmont of the famous vampire-killing Belmonts. And since you are a vampire-killing Belmont, you're off to kill vampires. So you travel to Count Dracula, yes, that one, Count Dracula's castle called Castlevania, surprise, and you have to travel through it and kill a bunch of vampires and monsters, and then kill Dracula using your whip, which I think is actually just called Vampire Killer. So if you were
the point,
if you were not clear on what your purpose is here, hopefully looking at the name emblazoned on your whip will clear that up for you real fast in case you have any changes of heart.
Simon's one of the ones in Smash, right? It's Simon and Richter.
I make a real point to know as little about Super Smash as possible.
It's the one where Luigi died, though. That's when they were announced.
Oh, because it was vampires, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The one where Luigi's soul was sucked out of his body.
Yeah.
As we discussed 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That would make sense. I mean, Simon is kind of the iconic Castlevania guy.
Right.
And then it gets rebooted eventually. But Simon, I presume, is also the hero of Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest.
You would think so.
Because otherwise that would feel a little bit misleading. Anyway, yeah, Castlevania, I was enjoying the few minutes that I played of it on my online little emulator guy. It was not anything particularly. Obviously, I did not get very far in the game. I was also not very good at it because, and I feel like this is in the spirit of Castlevania, the directions for the controls were not super clear. Mm-hmm. They were like, the A button is the Z key, and the B button is the X key. And I was like, great, what do the A and B buttons do? It turns out one of them is jump, and one of them is Vampire Killer Whip.
Well, that makes sense.
However, as we discussed recently, I have a hard time keeping track of different control schemes. And even when I just had 2 buttons, I couldn't remember which one was which a lot of the time. And I did a lot of whipping when I should jump, and jumping when I should whip. Which I think is a situation we've all been in life. Haven't you found in real life that sometimes you whip when you mean to jump, and sometimes you jump when you mean to whip?
All the time.
Yeah. But it was cool. I don't know. Castlevania is known for being quite difficult. I didn't really experience that, except that I was bad at the game, and at first I didn't know that I could jump or whip, so I just walked into the vampires.
You know, it takes a sign of bravery, right?
Yeah.
Unflinchingly walking to your doom.
Simon Belmont is not afraid.
Yeah, you use the intimidating gaze.
So you have keys that are left, right, up, down, and I thought the up button would maybe be jump, but it was not.
What is the up button?
So there are stairs, so you'll press the up button to walk upstairs, and press the down button to walk downstairs.
Fascinating.
It is. The controls were not very complicated, but I still managed to mess them up. But hey, folks, if you're wanting to get the original Castlevania experience, I just Googled play Castlevania online, and it was the first link. And it seemed authentic, so if after this you've washed the donut off your fingers and you're craving some Castlevania fun in your Castlevania, you can check it out. Don't know if this is legal. Hope I'm not advocating for super illegal activity here.
The FBI wants to know your location.
Anyway.
They're coming with the vampire killer for you.
Yikes. I hope that they jump instead of whip by mistake. So yeah, the original Castlevania, I mean, obviously there are puzzles and it's a platformer and you gotta kill stuff. But even just based on what I played of it, wasn't seeming particularly complicated, I'm sure there's a lot of difficulty, but it wasn't anything like particularly weird. And they add a lot of very different elements into Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. Which is really sort of our first entry in what people would start to call the Metroidvania genre. Mm-hmm. Or, as Wikipedia tried to tell me that some people call it, the Castleroids genre.
I'm sure somebody calls it that.
Castleroids sounds though like...
a medical condition?
Like a medical condition. It's like what you get when you've been sitting on your throne. Your, like, hard stone throne in your castle for too long.
Right.
Ooh, you got a bad case of Castleroids.
Let's stop saying it. How about we stop saying that word?
Great. We can go back to Metroidvania.
Thank you.
I feel like there was a little debate on Twitter or something in the games sphere a little while ago about Metroidvania being confusing. Did you see that?
I don't know. Like, there's just generally this sense that all of our standard genre classifications don't really mean anything anymore.
And I think that's valid. I fully admit, I don't really think, and I still don't feel 100% confident, that I understand what a Metroidvania is.
It's a side-scroller where you jump and attack.
But it also prioritizes exploration and generally has a world map and some RPG elements.
Yes. So there's, like, it's side-scrolling, but you still, like, it's not linear side-scrolling.
Right. So that to me feels like a pretty broad genre.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a side-scrolling game where you have a map.
Yeah.
And you can level up your character.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like there are a lot of those.
Yeah.
And then a lot of games that are like, well, they're not side-scrolling, but other than that, it's pretty much this idea.
Right.
So, in some ways, I'm tempted to agree. It's like, oh, this genre doesn't mean anything. I mean, how many times have I described games as action-adventure games on this podcast?
Yeah.
But I realize, like, that's the alternative, right? Either we can have weird frickin' names like Metroidvania that do call out some specific things about the game, or we can just refer to literally every game that will ever be produced in the future as either an action-adventure or a interactive puzzle or, I don't know, survival horror game forever and not have the genre mean anything.
I mean, honestly, like, of our genre classifications, Metroidvania is the only one that is, like, game-specific that I've ever seen frequently used. I guess I've seen stuff like BioWare RPG to identify things that aren't even from BioWare. That's the only other thing that I can think of.
Telltale game, like...
I really haven't seen anything described as that before. Like, as a genre classification.
Fair enough.
Like, sure, I've seen games that aren't from Telltale saying that they're kind of like the Telltale style, but they don't say, like, a Telltale game, like, you know?
Was there ever a game called Rogue that was a roguelike?
Probably.
See, there you go. Found another one. Boom.
I don't think that's where it comes from, though.
Boom. How about a Poke Clone?
Never seen that either.
I'm just making up genre classifications now.
Poke Clone is a fun one, I guess.
Thank you. Wow, an unexpected compliment. Excuse me while I cry for a few minutes.
Persona 5 is, you know, a famous example of a Poke Clone.
Poke Clone. It is. It really is. I do think Metroidvania, though, is a little bit interesting as a genre classification. Well, one, because Castlevania does not even start out as a Metroidvania, right? And many Castlevania games are not Metroidvanias. Mm-hmm. A good proportion of them, at least prior to the release of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, were just straight up side-scrolling, kill the vampire platformers.
Right.
And then, so Simon's Quest was a little bit different. And then obviously after Symphony of the Night and onward, they made more of these ones incorporating these RPG type elements. But it's interesting that the game that it's actually based on, like the name is based on, Castlevania, is not part of the genre.
I think people start really thinking about Castlevania with Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I know most people sort of associate them with the Igarashi, Koji Igarashi, who didn't actually start working on the games until Symphony of the Night.
Yes, the original 3 games were directed by Hitoshi Akamatsu.
Yeah.
Who was apparently a real horror buff.
Yeah.
But I also think it's interesting that it continues as a genre classification because, for all intents and purposes, Castlevania is, like, dead.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, kind of so is Metroid. When is Metroid Prime 4 coming out, Nintendo? It's been 6 years.
I'm thinking of that meme. You know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Listeners, do you know what I'm talking about? Good. Look it up in your castle. But Metroid, I believe, I mean, at least, like, Samus continues to be a kind of an iconic character, even if Metroid is sort of dead.
Sure.
But I don't feel like I can describe Simon Belmont as quite as iconic as Samus. And maybe that's because he's, like, less naked. But that's less woman naked.
Samus is usually entirely unnaked, so...
Emphasis on usually.
I don't know. Simon doesn't wear a ton of clothes either. He's got sort of like a tiny armor front going on, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I just don't think it's the same. Simon's not meant to titillate in the same way.
Yeah, like he's got like a weird little like one of those like cloths that like hang down between his little shorts. And, you know, like no sleeves. You know what I mean?
Are you objectifying?
He also has like in the Smash version just has like these random spiky chains wrapped around one of his thighs that don't appear to be serving any purpose. So
dang. Simon.
That's pretty iconic to me.
I stand corrected. But Metroid at least has not been forced into the slow, disgraceful descent into death that Castlevania has seen.
I mean, it's a Netflix original series, though.
Okay, you know? Fair. You know what? That's fair. I had forgotten about the Netflix anime. I don't think it's
Weren't you watching it for a while for the blog? Like, 2 years ago or something?
No, I talked about doing it for Watch This and never actually did. But hey, now that Click My Boyfriend is very into anime, maybe we'll watch it. Mm-hmm. Feels like a good pick.
Yeah. I haven't watched it yet.
Especially now that I know that Simon is meant for the female gaze.
Is Simon the main character of the animated series?
Haven't watched any of it. Couldn't tell you.
There's like a trio, I think.
Oh, excellent. Big friendship energy.
Is one of them is maybe Alucard? I don't know.
Well, while you look this up, my point being that there hasn't been like a real, I don't think anyway, a real Castlevania release since 2014. Although at the Tokyo Game Show, they did just announce a new mobile game, Castlevania, called Grimoire of Souls, that evidently looks pretty terrible. Graphics look really bad. It's going back to being like side-scroller, 2D. Not that there's anything wrong. I said that in the context of it looks terrible. Nothing wrong with 2D, nothing wrong with side-scroller. Just like has gone back from the 3D graphics that they had on the DS. And yeah, just like Kotaku just like ripped it. They were like, it looks like someone with a LiveJournal account like wrote over the logo. It was like, yikes. That was like unnecessarily harsh. But also, Castlevania has been moved into the pachinko realm.
Yes.
They're Castlevania themed, or erotic Castlevania themed. I don't know what I was saying about Simon not being iconic. There are like erotic Castlevania themed pachinko machines that are
Konami has
popular.
taken some of its franchises in interesting directions, I guess I would say.
Well, can we, like, Konami, it's so interesting because Konami to me is it's like a recognizable gaming studio name.
Yeah.
Right? I recognize Konami. I'm like, oh yes, Konami, they're one of the big players. But they really aren't in 2019. When is what games are they making that anyone is excited about? Metal Gear is kind of dormant,
well,
right?
That's the thing. That's the other thing, though, is that they basically, like, oh god, Kojima has his own company now.
Yeah.
So he's not making the Metal Gear anymore.
Yeah.
So like I said, they've made some interesting business decisions, I guess.
Also, working there is apparently terrible.
Well, I would imagine.
I mean, I'm not saying like, working everywhere in the video game industry is terrible, but they've gotten some particular press about how unpleasant it is.
Right.
But none of this to take away from Castlevania's, over the long term popularity and influence.
Right.
It did. I don't have current sales numbers, but I did see that by 2006, the series had sold over 20 million copies.
Right.
So no doubt it has sold many, many more since then. There are, I almost said pachinko collections, because I'm looking at my notes, and that's not what I meant to say. There are Castlevania collections that you could buy on pretty much all the systems. It was on the NES reboot thing. So I guess if I got Switch Online, I could really play it for real, which makes me feel 100% confident that the one I was playing was what? It's the FBI at my door. Thanks for tuning in, folks.
It's Trevor in the animated series, by the way.
How is that even worse?
Trevor Belmont.
They were like, Simon was a pretty lame. I'm so sorry. I really feel like there's people right now who are being like, I did not tune in to have my name made fun of today.
Simon, if you're listening, I believe that you could kill vampires with a whip if you really put your mind to it.
Make sure you don't jump when you need to whip.
Yeah, you just have to overcome that impulse where you go to whip and suddenly you're jumping, and vice versa. That's the most challenging part of learning how to slay vampires.
Truly.
Scientifically proven.
Yeah, there are many studies. Look it up. We won't get into it now because it's pretty technical. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like they were like, what name could sound even more sort of like British pretty boy? Not even British pretty boy. Like, was a British pretty boy in the 80s and is now like a grown pretty boy.
I don't know if I think of Trevor as a pretty boy name either. Trevor, if you're listening, I'm sure you're perfectly pretty, okay?
It wasn't quite what I was like, there's a little bit of like I was trying to come up with a way to talk about it that would sound disparaging without being too mean. And I was like, oh, like that laid back, like removed from it all lifestyle, but also there's a little bit of like dork to it. Mm-hmm. So,
fascinating.
Anyway. Thanks for tuning in to Madelynvania, where we analyze your names and make you feel bad about your name.
Submit your own name, and Mal will tell you whether she thinks that it's a name that is worthy to slay vampires or not.
Look, not everybody should want to slay vampires, and it's better that you know now. Okay? So just thank me. Thank me. I saved your life.
Thanks, Mal.
Did you know that Konami didn't allow their credits to feature people's real names in the 80s?
Really? Why?
They didn't want people to poach their developers.
That's funny.
So if they credited them with their real names, people would know who they were.
That's very funny.
So the original Castlevania has all these, like, slightly changed names of, like, famous horror writers instead of their real names.
What an interesting thing to make your staff do.
I'm like, thanks for your work. We actually don't want you to put your name on it, because then people will know you worked on this. And maybe try to hire you.
I don't know how that would really stop any other company from finding out who worked on it if they really wanted to, though.
No internet, really.
I guess so. No internet.
You'd have to call Konami, and they're not going to tell you.
That's true. Scandalous.
Castlevania was also particularly difficult, and I feel like this is such a Japanese games in the 80s and 90s phenomenon for, like, being badly translated. Mm-hmm. And so every once in a while there would be puzzles that it's just like, you would need a strategy guide, because the clues just, like, don't make sense in English.
I played some of Bloodstained, which isn't a Castlevania game, but is a Castlevania game.
Bloodstainedvania.
Yeah. It's the game that Igarashi made from Kickstarter after leaving Konami, because he didn't think they would let him make good games anymore because they wanted him to make erotic pachinko machines or something.
Can you imagine? Like going into that meeting and being like, "We have a new game for you to make. Like, please design." It had some kind of like horrible. Like the title was pretty bad. I can't remember what it was. Like an erotic adventure or something. Can you imagine?
No. I mean, my probable reaction would be go to Kickstarter, too. But no. And yeah, it's, they are difficult. I'll say that much. I don't know how it is with the original Castlevanias, but these ones I think are really ungenerous with checkpoints also. Like, if you're dead, you have to go all the way back to really far back.
I respect that design choice. It's just not my favorite.
Right.
I mean, we talked about this with Prince of Persia,
right? Yeah.
Where I just kept frickin' dying over and over. And it's like, I've already figured out how this works. Please don't make me do it again.
I mean, just at a certain point it gets frustrating, right? Because you feel like you've figured it out, but you just, in my case, are kind of bad with the combat. And you die a lot.
Well, that's why we don't let Emmas be vampire hunters.
Emma's not a vampire hunter name?
Bad with combat. You can hear it in the 2 syllables.
I mean, you know, I have never run or jump or whipped in my life, so I guess that's fair.
That's 2 of those things are probably true.
I think only one of those things is true.
That's what I meant to say. But I did the wrong fraction.
I have run and jumped, but it's been a while. It's been a while, folks.
Oh, she just tried to whip and she jumped right now. Oh, Emma, how silly of you.
Yes, I did that from where I'm seated on a pillow on the floor.
Her bedless room.
Yes, there's no bed in the bedroom anymore. It's just a room. Actually, there is a bed.
It's a bedroom vania.
I don't know what that would be, but I don't want you to explain it either.
You can side scroll through the bedroom.
Fascinating.
And go back to various points.
That's a very large bedroom.
Well, any bedroom is large compared to this recording studio here at NYCHQ. So.
Anyway, if you're wondering where my bed went, it fell down a hole.
Oh no!
It just suddenly appeared. It's sort of, swallowing up everything up around me. So I'll let you know if I fall down the hole
Those
and have to interrupt the podcast.
That's right, folks. Get your sweet treats ready, because we're going to talk about Donut County.
I had this misspelled on the website as Donut Country since I put it up there, but it is not Donut Country. It's not that big. It's just a county of donuts.
Once again, I have a story about I couldn't remember the title of this. I was like, Donut Crazy?
Donut Crazy.
Donut Crazy is like Candy Crush, but it's all donuts.
I bet there is a game called Donut Crazy.
I literally just made that up, but I bet you'll look it up and it will be a Candy Crush with just donuts.
Yeah. It really seems like something that should be out there.
I'm Donut Crazy. In many ways, I do live in Donut County because there are so many donut shops in a several block radius.
But Donut County is not set in New York City.
It is set in LA.
Is it set in LA?
Well, it's heavily inspired by LA. How about that? It's set in Donut County, technically, but heavily inspired by LA.
So, Donut County is described as the opposite of Katamari Damacy. Because instead of rolling everything up, you're supposed to make everything fall down a hole that you control.
Suck it up.
But anyway, the premise is that there's this raccoon named BK who has been hired at a local donut shop. And they have a new mobile app where you can order donuts. Only, shockingly, by ordering the donuts, you don't actually get donuts. Instead, you get a mysterious hole delivered to your premises that then swallows up everything, including you, and sends you down below the earth. And it turns out that this is a scheme by the raccoons in order to acquire more garbage. And BK is doing this because if he does it enough and like gets the most points, he gets a quadcopter, which he thinks sounds pretty cool. But anyway, it starts with sort of like retelling it because BK has also fallen down the hole after his friend Mira decides to stop him by ordering a donut to the donut shop and sending also him down the hole. And then they have to come together and overcome their differences to fight against the Raccoon King, obviously.
Mira also has a dog.
Yes. That's important.
I felt like I had no idea what Donut County was about at all because I thought that the name of the game was Donut Crazy for a while. But I'm pretty sold. I feel like I might have to get this. So folks, for the background, it came out in August 2018 on most of the systems, and then December 2018 on Switch. So it might be a game that I have to get for the Switch, or I guess for the PS4, whichever's cheaper. Because I've been waiting for a new Katamari game, what feels like my whole life. And I don't think it will ever happen. They gave us that whole big, just like, here's all the classic levels one, with nothing new. So I don't believe in there ever being a new Katamari Damacy ever again, so I'm craving that Katamari-like content. See, there's a genre title that I want.
Katamarian.
Katamarian. Perfect. Or Katamaric?
Katamaric. I don't like that.
Katamariic?
No.
Dang it. My genre streak is at an end. But also because Mira has a dog that she feeds bread and refers to as a certified loaf in the first 5 minutes of the game. So,
yeah,
I'm sold.
Yeah, they all sort of speak through like text speak, even when they're like talking to each other, which gives it, I guess sort of a unique flavor to the dialogue.
And you have a duck emoji.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk a little bit about the history of this game, because I think it's an interesting journey that it went on. So Donut County, on the surface, it doesn't appear to be like a crazy, complicated game. I mean, it's certainly a puzzler, but you're just moving a hole around, sucking things up. But it took the developer, who's an original, like a standalone guy whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head right now. It took the
Ben Esposito.
Ben Esposito. Yeah, it took him like 6 years to develop this game, which feels like a long time for what Donut County is. But that's because Donut County was originally called Kachina, which is a type of Hopi doll sculpture. And the original aesthetic of the game was the same idea of like moving this hole around, but instead you're sucking up all of this like Native American mythology stuff. And that representation originally got the game a fair bit of good press in sort of like early trailers, early demos. But it also received some backlash from actual members of the Native community and scholars for saying like, okay, so like in this game there are these Hopi dolls, but there are also teepees and other things that the Hopi did not use, right? So it's clear that whoever's making this doesn't actually, come from this culture or know very much at all about this culture. They're just using it to sell a game. And I was reading an article with Esposito, and originally he said, okay, so I saw that, and I'm embarrassed of this, but I doubled down, right? I spent a year doing a ton of research and working with experts and trying to figure out how to make this work. And after that year, I just realized, I couldn't do this, and so basically had to start from scratch. And he decided instead to sort of make this game sort of set in a county that resembles kind of gentrifying LA, And the story suddenly became much easier to tell
Mm-hmm.
because it was more based in his own experience.
Right.
Which I feel like is a kind of wokeness success story that we don't see that often in video games. Of somebody who received criticism and realized that maybe there was a point to it.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's always easier when it's your personal project, right?
For sure.
To turn your ship around.
Definitely.
Just because you're the only person on the line, I guess. But yeah, you're right. It's still good.
Yeah. As I was reading about it, I was like, oh no, like, what? You know, like, is this, like, actually a racist game hidden away in here somewhere? But it seems to be a game that, in some ways, the way he talked about it, he said it turned into a game that addressed these feelings of accidentally being really destructive.
Mm-hmm.
And not thinking that you're a jerk, but being a jerk anyway.
Right.
But also, it's like Katamari with holes.
Yeah, pretty much.
I will say that the whole aesthetic is not as satisfying to me as rolling a big ball of junk, even if the end goal is the same.
It's pretty satisfying to, like, play. To, like, see the things falling. I will say.
I might have to get it and try it.
I think you would like it.
She says, adding it to the endless list.
Right. There's too many games. If only
Already
there was
this
a
week.
hole in which we could suck up some of the games coming out and sort of delay their release, for another 8 months as they journey below the earth to get back their data.
I know, I'm really at a bad point to be adding games to my list. I'm like moderately deep to a little bit into like 3 or 4 different games right now.
This would be a good game for, like, traveling, though. Like, if you're going somewhere.
I'm not.
But if you were.
But
maybe it's, like, something to keep in mind, right?
Sure.
Because it's, like, something you can play in short bursts, and you don't really have to pay a lot of attention to it, right?
Have they considered adding a co-op version?
I don't know. Probably
where
not.
Where you try to make your hole the biggest hole?
That would be fun.
Yeah. Give the dude a call.
Just get his phone number.
Like, I know what you're thinking. 1 hole is enough, but have you considered 2 holes?
Fascinating.
Or 3 or 4. It's on the Switch now, dude.
Fascinating stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I think there's a physical release planned right now. So maybe for that. You know?
I wish. Everything should have co-op. Co-op everywhere. We haven't actually said the word donut very much.
Well, it's not really about donuts.
I know. The title is a little bit misleading. I did really
Well, I mean, it's like, it does have to do, like, the donut is a front, right? The donut company's a front.
And I get it. It's like a donut hole, right? That's the joke.
Yeah.
But it's a little misleading. Thought the game was going to be more about sugary sweet confections.
See, but that's how they get you, right? Just like the characters in the game. You think that you're getting into this for something good to eat. And instead, you are swallowed up by an endless void.
Dang. That just got deep. Ayo.
I want to stop playing this Madelyn-vania, please.
Yeah, I forgot. Madelyn also features some questionable humor.
That's the characteristic of it that's most important. Right? If it doesn't have that, you cannot call it a Madelyn-vania.
Yeah. Fire Emblem is a Madelyn-vania, but only when you're talking to Alois.
Yes, even specific sections of games can be called Madelyn-vanias.
Yeah. The Madelyn-vania is a flexible
malleable
genre.
term.
Yeah. I'm not picky about how it's used.
Right.
So I guess we should try to create our own Madelyn-vania now, huh?
I mean, I guess so.
Any thoughts about how to mash these two together?
Well, before I think it's to fully lay out our mechanics, it is worth mentioning that in Donut County, it's not just like you move the hole around and things fall down. Like there's puzzles involved with it.
Yeah, oh, of course.
Right? Like sometimes you have to like set snakes loose. And sometimes you have to drain the pond before you can have things fall down the hole in the pond.
I saw something with like a fire and a hot air balloon that was kind of cool.
Yeah. So bearing that in mind as we move into this, so we're not just like he wields a hole and the vampires fall down it.
It's a side-scrolling hole. And you just suck up Dracula.
Although I would play that,
the tagline is, I want to suck your blood.
Like, you are a hole, and there's all these vampires coming, and you have to try to drop them down before they get to you. I'd probably play that. That'd be a fun little arcade game.
But I'm confused about... so you have, like, a person in the middle who you're protecting.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, to suck them up, they would have to get to you.
Yeah, no, it's like the person in the middle, like, has, like, a controller with a hole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the hole moves around so that the vampires can't get to them.
Or maybe it's like a 2-player side-scroller where one plays as the hole trying to suck up the player, and the other plays as Simon Trevor.
So instead they moved on from vampire slaying to trying to defeat a sentient hole.
A sinkhole, yeah. Instead of wielding a whip, you wield a shovel.
That's what I call moving up in the world, you know?
Moving down in the world.
Moving up. I know it's a hole, but they're trying to avoid the hole, so.
It would be called Holy Simon.
Holy Simon.
Or maybe you play as a mole, and it's like, holy moly.
And that's what every reviewer would say upon playing this. Holy Simon, what the hell is this?
Okay, so it wasn't great. Fine.
You gotta start somewhere. You gotta warm up, right?
Yeah.
How about, so Dracula has turned the Belmonts into raccoons. As everyone
Okay,
knows,
I'm with you so far. Go on.
As everyone knows, raccoons are, the stereotypical familiars of vampires, right? That's what serves the vampires. Like, some people are mistaken and they think, like, it's bats.
How about
like
bat
crows? But no, it's raccoons. So they've sort of been turned into, like, Dracula's familiars. And then, like, in a sort of, like, Cuphead situation, in order to turn back into human form and try to slay Dracula, they've got to sort of do his dirty work by sending the common vampire power is also making holes in the ground, that can sort of move around. So they've been tasked with, like, getting people down a hole where Dracula can then suck their blood or whatever.
Better concept for that. Dracula is running a donut shop.
Okay.
For other vampires.
Okay, I'm here. I'm here with you.
Of course, one of the most popular donuts is what humans might identify as a jelly donut.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different flavor of jelly.
Mm-hmm.
Namely, blood.
Blood is liquid, though. Like, you would have to make it into some sort of jelly, vicious fluid.
Well, it is vicious, but I think the word you're looking for is viscous.
Viscous fluid, yes. Some vicious, viscous fluid.
Fair enough. We've got some creative donuts, is what I'm saying. We can make, like, it can be, like, an Boston cream eyeball donut or whatever.
Do vampires eat eyeballs? Or is it just, like, for all kinds of monsters?
It's for all kinds of monsters.
Okay.
Let's broaden it.
Okay.
So Dracula's running a donut shop. And Simon Belmont, or whatever, Belmont, we can give the Belmont whatever name.
Anti-donut, as he is.
What?
He's anti-donut, I assume.
I don't know if he's anti-donut or if he's down on his luck and needs a job.
Oh.
So he takes the job at this donut shop, thinking it'll help him turn his life around, not realizing what the donuts are.
Right.
Until Dracula trusts him enough that he puts him on, like, harvesting duty. And the way you do that is you trap people in holes.
But see, Simon, like, maybe we do that once, but I trust that Simon's smart enough to eventually figure out what's happening here.
So the problem
Or maybe
is...
Trevor has to come and snap Simon out of it.
Sure. And then the problem, like, you're replaced, right? You're replaced with a raccoon who is now controlling these holes, and you have to make your way back to the donut shop.
In a Metroidvania style.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all coming together.
Look, here's the better one. It's a pachinko machine, and when you sit down, you get sucked into a hole.
And then what?
You're dead.
You lose the pachinko.
Yeah.
Interesting idea.
It's a donut-themed pachinko machine.
Okay, no, I think we need to abandon the characters here.
Dang it,
right?
Okay.
We can't make a Castlevania fan game, okay? I mean, we could. The fans are starved. But, or parched, as a vampire might say. But we can't do it. So we need to get down to the mechanics, which is running, jumping, whipping, and holing.
Question.
Yeah.
When you refer to whipping, a lot of options here. Are you referring to the vampire whip? Are you referring to the dance move commonly paired with a nae-nae? Or are you referring to, like, what you would do to cream for a donut?
See, I think that you could interpret it any of those ways, as long as there's some sort of whipping involved.
Okay, cool. Continue.
I think it's up to our discretion as the designers. It still counts as being influenced, by the whip. But it doesn't have to be the whip.
Okay, cool. Go on.
Okay, so we've got those mechanics. Running, jumping, whipping, holing. And let's we got some elements, okay? We got castles, gentrified LA, like dark gothic, and like poppy, pop art, sort of.
Okay.
So these all go together really well, I think.
So LA has been gentrified in a pop gothic style, wherein everybody dresses like a goth, but like a colorful goth.
Okay, here's something.
You've rejected
So
my
it's
idea.
gentrified LA, okay? And then all of a sudden one day, this like big gothic tower, or like castle, just pops out of nowhere. It's a mystery.
Okay.
There's nobody's really seen the faces of the people who moved in there. They've talked to them like through the door, but they don't really want visitors. And you are a curious teen who happens to be an expert whipper. What does that mean? we can decide that later. And you and your friends are like, hey, what's up with this castle? I think we should sneak in and find out what's going on there. Only they realize that once they get in, that like the castle's full of these holes that move around, and they have to use like platform over these holes and avoid them through puzzle solving techniques, right? Like maybe you lure the hole to get filled with water, and then it can't swallow you up anymore.
Okay.
And then it turns out that these people living in the castle are raccoons.
Oh, I thought they were gonna be vampires. Okay, a twist. Good.
Yeah. You think from the start, like, oh man, they're vampires. They won't come out because it's daytime. It kind of smells funky over there. All these sorts of things. And it turns out that they're actually just a family of raccoons who are really into sort of the gothic architecture. I don't know how it ends. We can figure that out later.
You have to go all the way out of the castle. get them a donut and bring it back.
Yeah.
And they promise not to unleash a giant sinkhole on LA.
Sounds good. I think that's good. It's pretty good. I think it's better than Simon Belmont working at a donut shop, but that's just me.
What? Well, we'll pitch both to Konami and we'll see which they pick.
They'll say, how can we work slot machines into this?
Can we do this on mobile? Can you come with a mobile pachinko?
Yeah,
well,
so
folks.
that's pretty, I think that's pretty good. It's got sort of the irreverence of Donut County in there, too. But the aesthetics of Castlevania.
Does your friend group have a dog?
I mean, sure. Yeah. And you can pet it.
Why did you say that like that? You
I
like,
mean,
that's a dumb
why
idea.
wouldn't there be? Why are there games where you don't have a dog?
You're right.
And, like, half the games where you do have a dog, the dog dies. And, like, why is that a thing? You know?
I know.
It should just be every game has a dog that you can just pet whatever you want, and they stay alive, and they're your faithful companion.
All video game characters should have emotional support animals. You're right.
Exactly. They really need it.
Invincible emotional support animals.
Fire Emblem really needs, like, a room of therapy dogs.
They have, like, that cat alley.
The cat alley. But nobody pets the cats.
The definition of Emma-vania is the hero has an invincible pet.
I just think that makes every game better. Just my opinion, though. Take it or leave it.
Oh, last thing. What's the name of your game that you just made up?
The castle in the county.
How about Suckers?
Sure. Yeah, I like that. It doesn't make any sense, but I like it.
Like a hole, like, sucking you down.
Oh, I see.
But also,
it
like,
also
you're
makes you think of
stupid.
vampires. And also is calling you a sucker for thinking that it was going to be vampires.
Exactly.
I get it. That's pretty solid. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Look forward, listeners, to Suckers coming to a GameStop near you at some time.
On the Switch eShop for
Whenever
2 cents.
the world is ready.
Listeners, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Tell us, what would your Vania be if you were making... literally, why did it turn into our names, Vania? That's not how Metroidvania works.
Metroid is the character's name. Her name's Metroid Samus.
Is that real?
I don't know. It's not.
Anyway, if you liked this episode, you should subscribe to the show. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Overcast, Pandora Podcasts, on the app, and pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. You should also, while you're there, leave us a rating and a review. We love that stuff. And navigate your way on over to our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, see the games that are in the hat Emma is about to pick from, and read our blog, where you can follow long-running series, Click Boyfriend, where my boyfriend is playing through Kingdom Hearts 3, and Split Screen, where we're currently watching Boys Over Flowers and My Hero Academia. It's always a good time. You should always also, yikes, but really, seriously, always follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast, and we're on YouTube at Talk This Sisters. So, without any further ado, Emma, let's pick the games for next week's show.
Alright, so our old game is going to be Panzer Dragoon.
Panzered Raccoon?
Panzer Dragoon.
Oh, okay, so it's not about raccoons.
No, as far as I know, there are no raccoons.
Panzer Dragoon?
Yeah, they
You
just
sound like you're just putting random syllables together.
No, they just announced a remake for it like 3 Nintendo Directs ago.
Well, that's embarrassing for me then. And then what's our new game?
Our new game is Anthem,
Nice.
which I will be telling you right now, I'm not going to play Anthem for the podcast.
Well, don't get your hopes up, listeners.
Maybe I'll try to play some Panzer Dragoon, but there will be no playing of Anthem.
Is Anthem
I like
free to
my
play?
PlayStation 4.
Is Anthem free to play?
No.
Well, I don't know. It's like an online game. It could have been free to play.
No, it's $60 and it will brick your PlayStation 4.
Well, we can't have that.
But do you have a topic yet?
Oh, shoot. I was supposed to come up with it. No, I don't.
Well, it'll be a surprise then.
So next week, tune in for our second round of split screen fun, where
Nope.
I'll have some kind of topic.
It's not split screen.
Oh my god. I'm a mess. Tune in for our second round of side quest fun, where on our split screens, recording remotely, Emma and I will talk about some topic in games that I will decide in the next 24 hours or so. So hey, if you aren't following our social media, maybe I'll post about it on there.
Sounds good.
Alright, well that's all I've got for the good folks today. Emma, do you want to send them off with a gothic horror smile?
This week, I hope you get good at whipping.